Thank you very much. Again, everyone, we appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. As I mentioned before, a few of you who were just admitted to the meeting, hopefully you're here for the Alpine preseason coaches webinar. One of the things I will talk about is, as we always do, the preseason webinar is not about the winter games or anything like that. It's just to give everyone a basic understanding of what's coming up for the season. We will hit on the winter games and on a few slides here and there to give you some updates there. But really, this is just a base ground touch to get everybody on pace for what's coming up in this season. Okay, and whoever was getting pulled over, hopefully you're doing okay. With that being said, do want to introduce Matt Otwell, who's our Alpine Venue Director. I'm not sure he's able to join us tonight. He had something come up. But we also have, or we do have Kathy Cowdery, who is longtime member of the Alpine management team, our officials lead, and very well versed in the sport of Alpine skiing. I'm very pleased to announce joining us tonight is Elizabeth Kramer, our brand new sports director as of today. As we were talking about, she got here around 9 or so this morning and is putting in more than a full day on her first day. So appreciate Elizabeth, and I'll let her introduce herself in just a second. Myself, Steve Bennett, Senior Director of Competition for Special Mix Maryland, and then also monitoring some of the chat functions and any questions is Mike Sarnowski, our Vice President of Sports. So with that being said, as always, this webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on the Alpine Coaches resource page soon in the next couple of days. And it will also be sent out. These slides will be sent out in an email to you, as well as posted on our resource page, along with the link to this recording. So with that being said, I don't want to steal your thunder, Elizabeth, but if you want to introduce yourself to the Alpine coaches and just give a 10-15 second introduction of your background and that you're happy to be here.
Hi, so as Steve mentioned, I'm Elizabeth Kramer. I will be your sports director for Alpine skiing. Full transparency, I know very little about Alpine skiing, and I'm not a very good skier in general, but I'm excited to learn. I do have a sport management degree from Towson, and I've been working in healthcare for the last couple of years, so I'm excited to kind of get started, and my first full season will be Alpine.
Very good. Thank you, Elizabeth. And again, we're very pleased to have Elizabeth join the team. I'm going to be a great asset to us and to you as coaches, as a resource. And again, as we were interviewing, I said, you don't have to be an expert in all the sports, which I'm not in all the sports either. No one could be an expert in all of them. So that's why we have our management teams, such as Kathy and Matt, and other members through all of our sports management teams around the state. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, if you have a question, you can use the chat function. Mike will be monitoring that, or you can raise your hand electronically with the little function there that raises your hand. And depending on the question, Mike may stop me to address the question, or depending on the question, we may see that and address it at the end. So here's kind of what we're going to go through this evening. Just some reminders on the COVID protocols, the registration deadlines, the winter games and on snow training dates and schedules, the events that are offered, which have not changed, information regarding whitetail and wisp, housing, some of the Alpine specific information regarding helmets and some rules there, some tips on snow that Kathy will hit on, some of that Alpine specific things. And then we'll see what questions you guys may have as we get towards the end of the slide deck. But again, this is to concentrate just in general on the season upcoming so that you can prepare for the upcoming season and get everything in place. So as we always state, in order for anyone to start a training program or participate in the training program, the Special Olympics athletes must have their medical form complete and up to date and valid, as well as their communicable disease waiver form in hand and in place and submitted. And then the volunteers, whether it's coaches or sport volunteers, assistant coaches, all of that, their necessary applications, certifications are in place. That's before they can participate in a training. So if someone shows up and say, well, I'm getting my medical next week, that's fine. Appreciate you being here. You cannot participate in the training until those things are in place. As soon as you have them, make sure that your county leadership has them, and then give a reminder for them to make sure that they submit to the state office, so we're not scrambling towards the end to make sure all the paperwork's in place. But again, there's no exceptions to this, guys. This is very serious from a liability perspective and many other reasons. Do not let anyone participate without those things in place. If there's any questions, let me know. In regards to protocols and COVID, as a reminder, we've had this in place since the spring of this year. But Special Olympics Maryland, along with a lot of the input councils and other teammates throughout the state, whether it's coaches, athlete leadership, board of directors, etc., area directors, many others were involved in the process. But what we have decided as an organization is we're going to follow the state guidelines and the CDC, and also the county or local jurisdictions, as well as wherever a training session, a competition, or whatever else is happening, whatever that venue or facility has in place. So with that being said, you could say, well, my gosh, there's so many there going on. Right now, there's no restrictions that we're aware of in the state. There's no restrictions we're aware of in the county programs. But what may be in place, and sometimes is a school or a facility that you're going to, that maybe they require a mask or whatever like that. But we as an organization aren't doing that. But again, it's what is most restrictive. So if the state has nothing, the county government has nothing, but the facility says you have to wear a mask, obviously you're going to have to wear a mask or they're not going to let you in. Okay. So just want to make sure that that's clear. We will continue to monitor this. And if there's any significant changes with those stakeholders that made these decisions, we'll continue to monitor it. If there's any changes, your county leadership will be notified, and that information will trickle down. Depending on the situation, it may be a mass email out to coaches, but right now, there's nothing that we're aware of that have any restrictions regarding COVID and participation. So we always talk about, you heard me talk about your area leadership. When we talk about the forms, the certifications, the medicals, the CDWs, all of that kind of information, make sure you work with your county leadership or your program leadership. And everybody's entered into the training program through our database system. Everyone's forms are in place. If there's any questions, just reach out to them. They have access to the information. If there's any questions regarding who's up to date, etc. We also have other avenues for you to look at that through our coaches resource page as well. So again, what we really stress is, I know some programs have a sign-up sheet for whatever sports individuals show an interest in. Get that well in advance of the training, the first session or the season. So if you haven't already done so, get that information now and do the checks on the athletes, the partners, the coaches, the volunteers, and say, hey, appreciate you signing up. We're looking forward to having you. However, you need to go get your medical updated, or you need to take a protective behaviors course or whatever else in order to fulfill those certifications and be ready to go. As far as what each individual needs, this is a nice little spreadsheet or grid that we've put together that makes it a little bit more user-friendly, in my opinion. So athletes, their medical form and their communicable disease waiver, right? Your unified partners and general volunteers. In addition to that, they would have their volunteer background and application on file, and protective behaviors certification or the course there. Sport volunteers do that, as well as a concussion certification. It's a concussion course. And all of this is located on our coaches resource page. There's links to these courses, etc. As assistant coaches, you can see the progression there. Their assistant sports certification, which is their coaching Special Olympics athletes. And then the head coach is the coaching Special Olympics athletes, as well as the sports certification or the sports specific training for that given sport. Okay. So again, this will be sent out to you. Nice spreadsheet. I have it posted up on my wall. So if there's any questions, it's a quick reference there. Okay. So here are the deadlines coming up for the season. Okay. So there's basically three major parts to the registration and the deadlines. The first is your training registration deadline. So the first thing I'll say before we get to any of these deadlines, these are the deadlines we have at the state office. Your county or local program will probably give you different deadlines a week or two prior to what you see on this sheet, so that they can make sure they have it in place and they can submit it up to us at the state office so that everything's in compliance by these dates. So don't assume, hey, if I get it on the 3rd for the training registration deadline, good to go. Your area leaderships may say, no, I need it by December 20th or whatever. So just work with your area leadership, as we continue to say. But the training registration deadline, that's when pretty much anybody, whether it's a coach, a volunteer, an athlete, a unified teammate or partner, anybody who's going to be participating in alpine skiing at any level should be entered and on your roster for training. Okay. So, and that's anybody who, if they're not done by that date, if they're not in the training program, they're not going to be eligible to move on to the Winter Games. However, they can still continue to train and come in after that date, but they won't be eligible for the state championships or Winter Games. But it's very important that everyone gets placed into that training roster, okay? The second deadline we have there is after that training registration deadline, we do an evaluation or a report to say, okay, here's who's on their registration for training. Here's the ones who we at the state office don't have their paperwork in yet. You will have them. Your county may have them, but it may have not been submitted to the state office. So that's kind of a reminder. So that deadline for any of those missing forms that we haven't seen at the state office, that when those are due. Very important that when you look at the athlete medicals and the coaches certifications, etc., look at the expiration date because they need to be valid through the 28th of February 28th of next year to make sure that they're eligible for Winter Games. Now, in a situation where a medical may expire, January 15th or whatever, so they can start training, but we need to get that medical in place, okay? So just be on the lookout for that. And again, those are all the forms that we talked about in that grid and the certifications, et cetera, that need to be on file and valid through the 28th of next year for February. The important thing there is that although the last date for missing forms is the 13th of January, for the on-snow training, everybody has to be in place before that for January 7th. Everything's got to be certified to participate in that on those on-snow training dates, okay? Again, if we don't have them at the state, they can still continue to train, but we won't allow them to come to the on-snow training if we don't have their forms on file. Okay, very important there. The last major deadline there is the competition registration deadline, and that's for the Winter Games. So again, that's when we will look at working with the area leadership and taking from the training rosters and the training registrations and moving people in to the competition for Winter Games. And that's when everyone's events and levels, etc., must be input into the database and the system. Okay. So just want to make
yeah, Steve, just for clarification on that also, because I'm sure someone may be asking, you will still, as we always, well, or at least for the last 20 some years, have done with Winter Games, you, if need be, can change levels or events once they get to the time trials. And there, as long as you get a time trial for the event, a lot of times you can't really tell whether they can handle a particular course or a particular level until you see the actual level and they're on that specific course. But then when it comes to that, we'll go into more detail at the pre-competition webinar for that. But did want to clarify, yes, you will have that opportunity to adjust. Hopefully it's only a few because you've made good choices.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for that.
And also, while we have a slight pause, I did want to let folks know we have another esteemed member of our Alpine team with us. Jarrett Krumbach has joined us as well. So
Very good. Welcome, Jarrett. Glad to have you as well.
Glad to be here.
Very good, Jarrett. Appreciate it, brother. So here we have, where can you find the certification status of your participants? As I said, you can work with your area leadership. There's also on our coaches resource page, you can see the link here that will take you there where you can look for certain certifications and certain information to find out what people's statuses are in regards to those documents or dates that people's expirations are occurring or whatever. So again, it's just another avenue. We're trying to be helpful and provide you with as much information as we can through our coaches resource page. So again, this just provides you those links as a resource for you. And as we mentioned in the bowling webinar earlier this evening, I think everyone's aware, but just to reiterate it, the coaches resource page is open to the public. So as we continue to share information with families, athletes, partners, other members of your crew, whether it's volunteers or whatever, the coaches resource page is designed primarily for coaches, but the information there can be valuable for families and others to be informed of what's coming for Alpine or other sports throughout the year. So what we also ask is if you go to the coaches resource page and see something that you think should be there, let us know. We're always looking for ways to improve, to add to it, and be more helpful as an organization to you guys and to others within Special Olympics. There are some things that we can't put on there, but again, we want to have that open communication and make it as user-friendly and as useful as possible. So coach requirements, we already kind of went through that on the grid. This is just another slide that you can use as a resource or a reference as we move forward. One of the things that you'll see in one of the upcoming slides is what's called an advanced coach. And that's where an additional course is principles of coaching. And that's primarily for, every course is valuable, but the requirement for an advanced coach, or what that advanced coach primarily is for any coaches looking to go as part of Team Maryland to a USA Games, an advanced competition outside of the state, whether it's a national invitational tournament, a USA Games, or a World Games. But again, the course is very valuable, and continuing as a coach, your education. It's not something, if you want to take, we will definitely sign off on that and update your credentials and encourage you to do so. Just another level of you continuing your coach education. So here's where I talked about that advanced coach. So you can see this is pretty much the same slide as we saw in the other grid, just another visual for you, the same information. But here's where I talked about that principles of coaching and the advanced coach that can move on outside of the state to advanced levels of competition. And I do want to give credit to Janet Larimore from Howard County, who put this grid together. Again, making it very user-friendly. At least for me, I'm a visual guy. This works better for me. So here's some dates. So Winter Games, this is the on-snow training dates. We were continuing with whitetail for the on-snow training. The first on-snow training will be January 7th. The second on-snow training will be February 11th. Again, you'll get these slides. So just make note of that. And then, as you guys all well know, weather pending. But whitetail continues to be a great partner of ours, and look forward to continuing that relationship and partnership moving forward. But I want to make sure everyone kind of has those dates on their radar as we start to get the training registrations in, and et cetera. So you can start sharing that information with your crew. The Winter Games. If you haven't heard, we are going to Wisp Resort. located in Western Maryland. Those dates will be February 26th through the 28th. And the time trials will be on that Sunday. So as always, anybody who is participating in the Winter Games must attend the time trials. And again, as Mike indicated earlier, if there is a change in levels that you thought maybe on the on-snow training they could do, we get to WISP and it's a little different course, a different level, little bit of a slope or challenge. There will be some times, or there will be time available for you to adjust that on their levels. But as Mike indicated, they must get a good time trial on whatever level they're switching to. And we'll get some more information as we get closer to the time trials in the pre-competition webinar coming up, getting closer to Winter Games. But again, WISP we're excited to go back to WISP. We're excited to keep our relationship with Whitetail. I think there's some good things there that are happening on all levels. The one thing I will tell you is, as we said, if you have any questions, put it in chat or raise your hand. I will say that we haven't been back to WISP in 13, 15 years, something to that effect.
Last games there was in 2010.
So about 13 years. So with that being said, there have been some changes at WISP. There's a lot of things right now that are unknown regarding what slopes we're going to use, what facilities we're going to use, where certain locations are going to be for the Winter Games. We're doing a site visit on December 10th that weekend as a management team to dial in some things. But so just be patient with us. As you can imagine, any new big change like this or new venue, there's going to be a lot of details that are unknown at this point, and we will communicate as soon as we know the details. Mike?
Hey, Steve, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to note this on here. One of the things that we had suggested or offered to the snowshoeing coaches who had their session of this type a little while ago was to have a session early to mid-January where we can share, after we've done the site visit and had time to plan and get some thoughts together, have an opportunity to share with you these are our plans for Alpine and such, and have the opportunity for you to give feedback. We certainly will go over that stuff during the pre-competition webinar, but that's typically so close to the date of the games that it's too late to make any changes. So this may give an opportunity for you to give input and where it could have actual impact on that. So I'm going to assume that would be valuable to at least some people who are here. It may actually be some people who were with us as a coach the last time we were at WISP and have some thoughts there too. So we'll keep you posted on that. And again, it would probably be in, like I say, early to mid-January. Unfortunately, realistically, doing it at one of the on-snow training dates, you guys have been there. There's no real way to make that work. You guys have to focus on your athletes, and that's exactly what you should be doing. So we're not even going to try it then. But yeah, this would be a good opportunity for you, again, where it can actually have an impact and it's not too late to do anything. Not that we can do everything you want, but we certainly can probably do some of the stuff. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. So again, purpose of this webinar is not to focus on Winter Games, but just kind of as a general brief and synopsis of kind of what to expect. Obviously, the time trials are going to be on the 26th on Sunday. Schedules and everything else are still under development, but this is kind of a basic game plan, if you will, for the Monday and Tuesday of the finals. But everyone will be staying at WISP Resort under one roof all together as delegations. The lunches and the breakfast and dinners will all be there in the McHenry room on WISP property that is actually built into the hotel, if you will, as a wing or an attachment to the hotel. So it's very conducive to general operations, but don't want to spend a lot of time on this. You can look at this at your leisure. But basic parameters as a rough guesstimate at this time. Same thing for Tuesday. Get up early, get your breakfast, get dressed, get ready, get out on the hill, and finish the day. So again, very basic information, very tentative, but again, it gives you some kind of idea of what to expect for the 2 days of finals. Again, the 26th, more information to be coming with that regarding the time trials. Almost coming to Kathy to take over some of the slides. But again, no changes here in regards to the events that we've offered previously. The one thing that I will say that's coming up in one of the next couple of slides is make a note. If you have anyone in your program who's a competitor who needs adaptive ski equipment, such as a mono ski or anything of that nature, you need to notify me, and I'll work with Elizabeth on this, but notify me as soon as possible. At this time, we're not positive that WISP will have the same availability of those type of pieces of equipment as Whitetail has had with the Two Top program. I think that's what it was called, or what it is called, that can train people as tetherers, etc. So if you have anyone that you anticipate coming that needs the mono ski or any other type of adaptive equipment, let me know now so we can try to figure out a solution with that scenario. Okay. So again, almost you, Kathy, get ready. So just the different levels and types of competition we offered. Again, nothing new here, ladies and gentlemen. We have the novice, intermediate, and advanced courses. They're at each level of the events that we talked about earlier, except for the glide and super glide. They're kind of on their own, if you will. And those are events that are primarily for beginner athletes or athletes who aren't ready to get on the main hills or the main slopes, who are just learning and have some challenges or whatever. So those are those two events, but everything else are offered in all three of the levels, the novice, intermediate, and advanced. So again, leading into the events, as you look in your training programs and on the on snow trainings, know that the limit is 2 events for each one of the competitors. And then they can also, if they choose to, do an additional unified event. But all those events must be in the same level, whether it's novice, intermediate, or advanced. Okay.
Hey, Steve, David Leger, and I'm not sure what this is, so hopefully Kathy or Jarrett or George, since George Hergenhan is here as well, may be able to answer. He's asking, is it possible to get a standing glider? I assume that's a type of adaptive equipment.
This is Kathy. I do not know.
Okay.
So yeah, David, if you want to send me that email, we can have a chat, whether it's me or Elizabeth, to get further details on that.
He says, okay.
Sounds good. All right. So this is just really what I just talked about with the adaptive equipment. Just let me know as soon as possible. If there's an individual, we want to do everything we can to find a solution, knowing that that could be a challenge. We need to know in as much advance notice as possible to start working on that solution. So with that, Kathy, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and, again, we're not going to get into a lot of detail. This is just some basic recaps and some basic information. But Kathy, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and you let me know if there's anything you want me to cover.
No, that's fine. Glide and super glide are on the novice, and they're just a straight run. The super glide's just a little bit longer with 1 to 2 turns. Pretty basic for the very, very beginner who's getting out on the snow. Hasn't quite got the hang of turning, but on the way. Giant slalom is the second fastest course, and I think if you go to the next slide. Giant slalom. Yep, so there's 3 types. There you go. So you can see here that you've got the slalom course, the giant slalom, and the super G. So on the slalom, it's where there's only 1 pole, and it's where you're making a little tighter turn. So you've got to have a little bit more skill to get around the flags, around the poles. The giant slalom is where you've got 2 poles with the flag. So you're skiing in between. You've got a little bit slighter turn. So it's just like his cursor. It's a little bit more skilled. You're going to go a little bit faster. And then the Super G is the one to the far right. And that's where you've got your poles and the flag there. Yes. So you're making a little bigger turn and you're going to pick up more speed. So we've got 3 courses.
And again, just so you guys know here, and Kathy, you can correct me, I'm not expert in Alpine either, but you got your start gate, and then the first gate you go in between the poles and then you go alternating.
That is correct.
Yep.
Just like your cursor. That is correct.
Good deal. Okay.
Yep, those are just the words that go along with what I just said.
Okay.
People
Okay.
can read them later.
Yep. Understood.
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay, so on snow training, this is where we set up the course, allow the athletes to come out and practice training. We like to have enough coaches or volunteers on our side, the ski instructors, to be able to offer good coaching to the athletes on the course. And then we've done in the past where we've had you as a coach can stand next to us and we give you feedback as your racer comes through the course. That's been pretty valuable. I know we've gotten good feedback on that for the coaches, and we hope that we can get enough volunteers to continue to do that. But basically that day is so your athlete can run the course and get their practice in. But we're also available to provide other kinds of instruction. If you have something specific, you can just reach out to us. So we can offer that as well.
I'll hit this one, Kathy.
Yep.
We continue with our partnership with Whitetail and Vail Properties. We don't have a confirmation currently on some of these things. However, what we anticipate in our initial conversations with at least Whitetail, who is also our great partner up there, has also worked with Ski Liberty and Round Top as well to provide some discounted rates. Now, this is tentative. So what we've looked at and what we know we were able to do last year was these rates were available on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week. We know that can be difficult at times for some programs to get to those facilities, but know that if you go on the weekends, you most likely will pay their typical standard rate. That's for a many number of reasons, but it's very tentative at this time. But for those on snow trainings, that's kind of out of the norm, if you will. On the weekend, we've made those arrangements, and they've been very gracious enough to look at continuing those rates of $26 for a lift ticket only, $36 for a lift and rental equipment if needed, and then lunches around that $10.50. These aren't in stone yet, ladies and gentlemen. This is very tentative, but very likely. So again, as you look at budgets with your program or whatever, know that outside of those days of the week, if you go up on the weekends, most likely you will be paying regular general public fees, if you will. Please do not try to say we're Special Olympics. We have a special rate. That creates a lot of problems, a lot of confusion, a lot of heartache on both those resorts, as well as us, as well as your area program, etc. So they have been very gracious to offer these discounted rates on those days of the week. But just know going into it, at this time, on the weekends, you're going to be paying, and either on whatever it is, Monday and Friday of the week, you're going to be paying general public rates. And that's just the way it is, ladies and gentlemen. Know that these properties have gone through some heartache over the COVID years. And, you know, some of them had to close down here and there. Again, they have been very gracious to extend these discounted rates for the days where they can, but we also have to respect their operations and what they are able to do for us. What I will say is, as we continue those negotiations, if you will, and that clarifications or confirmations, I know there has been some challenges sometimes, not necessarily at Whitetail, but at Round Top or Liberty, knowing that they don't work directly with us as much as Whitetail, but we will give you instructions and do the best we can to make that ask or confirmation or scheduling your training sessions up there with those discounted rates on those days as smooth as possible from our end. Once we get into that season, if you're having some difficulties, please don't continue to call those different resorts and, try to keep calling and I need to talk to somebody else. I need to talk to somebody else. Let us know. We can make those calls and hopefully work it out a little bit quicker and smoother than a bunch of different county programs calling and making those same requests. Okay. Let's see. Okay, housing information, and this is primarily for it is for the winter games at Wisp. We have reserved the entire property at Wisp for winter games. We are currently looking at also some auxiliary hotel accommodations, whether it's other hotels, some rental properties, houses, etc., for either management team and others. But our what we are looking to do is have all delegation members stay in the Wisp Hotel. With that being said, I have also had at least 2 family members who have called me. Kudos to them for being very proactive and energetic and enthusiastic about going ahead and trying to reserve their own rooms at Wisp. That is not going to be possible. All delegation housing must come through you as a head coach, through your county leadership. No one at Wisp will be taking onesies, twosies reservations. We have one person from our management team, that's Jane Dunn. I think many of you will recognize that name, who will work directly with the hotel to do all of the housing. They will not take any individual calls. Well, I'm with Special Olympics, I need the rate. They're going to say, you need to call the state office or you need to call your county director. So please help us coaches relay that information to your families. I will say there are some families who choose to stay outside of the delegation, which is their choice, if you will. But if that's the case, they will not have a room at Wisp. They will need to go on their own, find their own location. Again, we are reserving the Wisp Resort for staff, management, and delegation members who are being housed together. If there's people who choose to stay on their own, that's up to them, but we won't have responsibility for that. We will provide them some information as far as some recommended locations or whatever, but just want to make that clear. I think that's really all I want to hit on that. But again, really stress that because that can be a sore spot for Wisp trying to be helpful, if you will. Oh, Special Olympics is back. It's so great to have him back. Yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to help him out. Oh, crap, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have booked that room for that family. Oh. So please help us with that. Again, if you have any questions on that, let me know. But basically, nobody makes their own housing at Wisp other than you through Jane. So here's just some recommendations. Again, we have on our coaches resource page some information there. A lot of good resources for training. Definitely take a look at that. We had a great training session here a couple weeks ago with Matt. And I think there was maybe 13 or 14 county programs represented at the Alpine coaches training, which was awesome. I think it was very well received and some really good interaction with the coaches. If you have any ideas or some things that you have found, whether it's on dry land training or any other kind of fitness opportunities that you have seen as a coach that are beneficial and that aren't on our resource page, as we said, please share them with us so we can share those with other coaches that may find that what you found to be beneficial, they may also like to get a hold of and see if it works for their athletes or their training programs. As we make a transition from Whitetail to Wisp, One of the things that, we always try to profess is that with Special Olympics, you never know what division you're going to be in. You never know, you're going to be with fellow competitors of your same ability level. But with the new slopes, the new terrain and everything, always profess it's about doing your personal best. It's not about winning a gold, winning a medal, although that's nice, but it's really about improving your skills, having good sportsmanship, and doing your best. Knowing that there's going to be some challenging terrain. That's just something as a coach you want to continue to emphasize and reiterate is, hey, I saw you, really emphasize the points that you're seeing in your athletes or partners of what they're improving upon. And I really saw that. Key in on that. Let the medals and ribbons be what they may be. But again, really emphasize doing your personal best and focus on improvements. And working on techniques and that kind of stuff. So Mike, I saw you
I wanted to emphasize that second bullet that's there. And this resource, the Special Olympics Alpine Coach Resource Guide, it's something that's been developed for pretty much all the official sports that Special Olympics offers. But it's an exceptional guide. It's available online. I think you can download it to your phone, or you can link it various ways. I believe the Alpine one has some embedded video, but it's lots of things on running a program, and particularly they have a pretty nice section there on dry land training, which many of you I hope will be doing in addition to your on snow training. So if you have not taken a look at it, I strongly recommend taking that opportunity for this sport and for any of the other sports that we offer. I think for almost all the sports Special Olympics Maryland offers, with the exception possibly of cheerleading, I think that and flag football, that there's a guide of that type. So they're exceptional. They've been there for a bit, but the guidance and stuff doesn't expire. So
cool. So this is the basic layout. Again, I'm not going to go into all of this, but this is whitetail, and this is just kind of a layout of the on snow training. We'll check in up here. The food court will be over here. The slopes are up that way. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to go through a couple of these other slides really quickly. These are the anticipated courses we'll use at whitetail for on snow training. Again, the courses at WISP are still to be determined. And then, Kathy, you just want to hit on some of these slides really quickly. I mean, these are some very basic information that you guys can look at a later time. But if there's any highlights you want to hit on these, Kathy.
Not really for the health. I mean, the medical, that's you. But for the personal health, when athletes are competing in any sport, really, you want to make sure that they stay hydrated, that you have sunscreen, just some basic hygiene, use your lip balm. That stuff is very important because the sun, like it says down there, reflects very strongly off the snow. So you really want to take care of your skin, take care of your eyes. Goggles are required while you're out on the slope. Yep, and obviously clothing, you want to stay warm, better to dress in layers than to wear one big bulky coat. A balanced diet is of course good. And this is where you can really build up and eat all those carbohydrates. Fresh fruit, vegetables, all of that's really good. And stay hydrated, stay hydrated, stay hydrated. Yeah. The only thing I have to say here is you always want is that I have found that when you get to a resort, you want to find out the phone number of the ski patrol. And so in your phone, you can put the phone number of ski patrol in your phone. So if you ever need it, you can call.
And the other thing I'll say there, as well as that, Kathy, is as we talked about, you guys will get their athlete medical forms. As a coach, it's your responsibility to have hard copies or have access to those when you're in a training facility, whether you're at Whitetail, or at the on snow training, or on your own or whatever. So that if an incident does pop up, you have access to those medical files in case of an emergency. Also, you'll see at the very end of these slides, your area leadership have what is called an incident report form. It's a one-pager just from an insurance perspective, you can document if any accident or incident occurs, document that, and then turn it in for the insurance purposes right away. But make sure you have those with you when you're traveling to and from trainings or at training facilities. And again, these are just some other tips and procedures, look ahead in advance of what the weather is, what the slopes are. A lot of the resorts now have the trail cams, if you will. You can see the resorts when you get up there. Go ahead, Mike.
So Steve, yeah, actually, this is about if there is an accident. So the stuff to document there. The key thing, you can read through this at your leisure. Hopefully everybody's already doing this, but particularly for when you're going on your own, or you're doing your dryland training for that matter as well, have your own first aid kit and have copies of the incident report form with you, and a pen would be helpful, and fill that out. There's instructions in the resource section of this slide deck. We're not going to go into it. That has that there. The incident report's also available on the coach resource page. I can speak from almost personal experience with some of my athletes, having that if someone gets there, that doesn't have to be an athlete. If someone gets injured, having that incident report completed makes accessing Special Olympics insurance, which is a secondary insurance, dramatically easier and smoother. And so I again, having experienced both situations where one was filled out and where one wasn't, it made a world of difference. I mean, everyone still got covered and everyone still got their stuff, but it was smooth sailing. I mean, unbelievably easy when the incident report was, we had that and we didn't have to go back and recreate it. So that's all I wanted to say with that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, at the time, it's much easier to document the information than, oh, I'll get to that later, and then you forget some of the details, which are very important. So good points there. So here's just some very general highlights of competition rules, etc. So obviously we use the Special Olympics rules. We division based on the parameters of the age, gender, and abilities, and their different levels. So those are all just basic information there. Again, a reminder that, no alcohol is to be consumed at an event, and then any tobacco products or anything like that only in designated areas, but not around athletes or any other competitors at the event. No foul language. And again, when we get the event guide ready to go, leading up to it, there'll be some more information and details there. Back to you, Kathy, if there's anything here you want to hit on as highlights for basic rules or reiterations.
Just the 1 minute rule is for the intermediate and advanced, and the 2 minute rule is only on the novice course now. We have gone to coaches as escorts, and that's worked out very well. So we will continue that at WISP. Well, I'll just say on time trials, it's important to remember you only need one good run is required. The Super G, the first run is practice and the second is timed, and that's Super G is the longest run that we have. That's probably good. And now you have that requirement that your helmets have to be that FIS RH 2013 certified, and that's on the giant slalom and the Super G course.
Yeah, but
and I believe you still have stickers that you put on the helmet. So
I just need to find them in the warehouse.
Yeah. And all athletes, of course, must wear goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the definition of the time trials and the 1 minute rule and the 2 minute rule, as Kathy had indicated earlier, in regards to getting back up, and with an athlete falls, getting back up within that time limit to get back started on the course. And again, these are just some very general rules as far as, finishing the race, passing the gates, what the needs are there. We also talk about, the combined runs, the 2 times, to add to the finals in the final competition components, if you will. And again, the glide and super glide is just the 1 run. So again, this is about can't stress this enough, ladies and gentlemen, about any adaptive equipment. You got to let me know, and Elizabeth and I will work with you as soon as possible so we can work on finding some solutions with anybody using adaptive ski or adaptive equipment. And again, not going to go into these rules. This isn't really about competition, but you make sure as coaches you go back into these slides and just become familiar with it. You don't need to know everything by heart, but know where to access it, such as when you're training your athletes about if there's a hearing impairment or a visual impairment, how to work with those athletes in the start gate, and to get them going, work with them using these guidelines, so that they're well prepared for on-snow training and the winter games themselves. As we talked about, or Kathy kind of hit on with the staging. Again, some of those procedures at WISP we're still working on, but it'll be similar to what we did at Whitetail. Utilizing the coaches, as Kathy indicated, to help with those athletes getting up to the start courses, from the ski lifts up to the start gates, communicating all of that. So again, just make sure you take a little time to read through some of these slides. If there's any questions, just make sure you give me a call. And then as Elizabeth starts her 2nd or 3rd day, I'll start passing that information along to her. She'll work with the Alpine management crew to answer some of your questions in regards to some of the rules specific information. Continuous timing is just something we talk about. And again, we'll hit on this as we get closer to the event. And here's some things just to know about disqualifications, about falling. Again, it indicates the 2 minute, 1 minute rules. It talks about, hopefully nothing new here in regards to inappropriate coaching. And again, just to reemphasize that that's not just from coaches, that can be from any spectators or families. Make sure that they're just doing encouraging. We talked about at the Alpine sports specific training. It's not just, are we just looking or listening for words to say, turn left, turn right? Oh, that's coaching. It can also be cadence. We have found some coaches who have been very creative in the past that I'm not coaching, but people have picked up on it. Every time the coach says, yes, that means turn. Yes. So there's cadences too that Matt and the Alpine crew have noticed, that it's not using coaching terminology, but it is a form of coaching that they have recognized. And it's also something we found in kayaking as well. Again, I salute the creativity of coaches, but it's basically, you're giving instruction regardless of what words you're using. It's pretty obvious that every time you say, yes, they turn, and you're not saying yes 3 times in between gates. So again, just be cognizant of that. And again, it's just to create a fair atmosphere. The training is for your coaches and your coaching perspectives, your coaching techniques. Once they get on the course, they've been trained, they know what to do. Let them do it. Let them showcase their skills. You can coach in between their runs, that kind of thing. But, once they're in the race gate, coaching stops. Mike?
Yeah, and just as a pointer, and this is noted under the first bullet there, but applies to all of these. have your athletes during your training, work some scenarios where, okay, they missed a gate, even if they didn't have them actually miss a gate and go through the process of walking back up or sidestepping back up to actually get the gate so they're not actually DQ'd. That's something you should be practicing to the extent that you can with your own equipment and so on, so that's in their head, and and they're much better prepared once they get out there, and hopefully they don't have to use it, but if they do, they've got it. So any of the disqualifications and such that are here, you should, to the extent that you can, work with your team and work with your athletes so they're ready just in case that happens in their situation.
Absolutely. Talk about protests and things of that nature. One of the things we do like to emphasize is we have heard some aspects over the years where coaches say, well, I'm not going to file a protest because I don't want to create a problem, or it's not really worth it, or I don't want retaliation as a coach from Steve or Mike. That's never going to be the case. The protest procedures are there for a purpose and for a reason. If you think a rule has been misapplied or something has been missed, etc., trust me, there's going to be no retaliations or whatever else, obvious, or more so it'll be a, hey, I got you. I don't know. Let's look into this. But you're advocating for your athletes. It's nothing against the officials. It's nothing against the management team. It's nothing against staff. It's, hey, this is what I think happened. I'm going to protest. And again, if there's a question about it, go ahead. Let the protest procedure work itself out. But you're advocating for your athletes. If something you feel has been misapplied as a rule or something of that nature, go ahead and fill it out, and we'll address it. So anyway, I just want to make that clear. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not to keep prolonging this, but one thing with that also, unlike other sports where I know many of the folks here coach multiple sports. In track, you could, rather than file a protest, you could have as a first step, go and ask a question of the official of, hey, did such and such happen? And you can certainly attempt to do that here, but the reality is, given the distance between where you are as a coach and where the incident would have happened, it's less likely to be able to do so within whatever the time frame happens to be. So we fully expect that compared to other sports, there's going to be likely to be a somewhat higher percentage of protests here, just because you can't do that. You can't go and ask a question quite as easily or as immediately as maybe you can in some other sports. So keep that in mind. Preserve the right, and heck, if it's not honored, it's not honored. But again, you're protecting your athletes. So
Deal. Here's some links, and again, these are available or will be shortly on our coaches resource page. I want to give kudos to Mike, as we've been down a sports director for a little while, and now Elizabeth's back, joined us, which is awesome. But we'll continue to update the coaches resource page. Just know that that's in process, if you will. If you were on there and within the last couple of days or a week or two ago, there was a lot of information that was still posted from last year. We're in the process of updating that currently. Like I said, this slide, the link, etc., will be posted there in the next day or two. And then we'll continue to add information there. But again, we're looking for you for feedback from the coaches resource page. If there's something you think should be there, let us know. And Elizabeth, myself, and Mike will work to get that back on track there. Again, just some more resources here. Again, here is Elizabeth's email that will be coming and operational in the next couple of days. So in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Just know that within the next week or so, it's going to be a little difficult as we prepare for our bowling state championships to respond in a timely manner. And here's the other sports directors, as we indicated: Ryan Kelchner for snowshoeing, and Melissa Anger with the general sports she does. She'll be involved with winter games, but in a general capacity with control center and maybe helping out with Alpine and some things of that nature as we gear up for winter games. But in the interest of time, I know we ran through that pretty quickly, but I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. We have 1 minute left. Mike, I don't know if there's any questions that.
So yeah, pretty much all the questions that came in through the chat, I've been able to answer. Clarification on a maximum of 2 events, as opposed to 2 individual plus a unified. We did cut down to 2 events last year because we had competition on a single day. So that's that. And then the question of if you are doing for example, the Super G, you can't also do the unified Super G. I believe that has been in effect. There may be some greater flexibility of schedule at WISP since we're not traveling back and forth with an extra half hour each way. So there may be some opportunity for that. We'll get clarification. Question about, are we looking at the same rates for areas to use at Liberty and I guess any of the other Vail resorts? And yes, as we're going through it, we don't have an answer yet, but we're looking at that. And then whether there's a ski equipment shop at WISP, yes, they have an excellent one. And then there's probably a dozen more within a mile of WISP as well. So if they have a problem on site and they can't handle it, they've got there's all sorts of options there. Nate has a question. Okay. Well, we'll after we kill the recording, Nate, I'll stay on and we'll see who else is, and we can try to answer your questions for you. But it looks like that's it. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
So
with that, just want to, on this slide deck, you'll see here at the end after we say thank you. Here's all those resources. Talks about a lot of the things. It shows examples of the medical form. It shows example of the incident report form. It talks about the code of conduct. All these things that you should be familiar with. If any new coaches are here, make sure you take a look at these resources and become familiar with them. Again, you don't need to know everything by heart, but just know that they're here and available. If you need to reference them, they are available. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. We are excited for another great winter season. I'm definitely not a weather forecaster, but I will say that what I've heard, excuse me, is that this winter they're expecting some good snow. I don't know what that based on, but it's from some good resources. So hopefully our fingers will be crossed. And again, we'll have a lot of good opportunities to get on the slopes prior to the on snow, after the on snow, and leading into winter games. But thank you for coaches, everything you do. We thank you for your dedication to the organization, to your athletes and partners and teammates, the family members. We know many of you wear multiple hats and serve in many different capacities and many different sports throughout the year. Without you, Special Olympics programming does not happen. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Jim Schmutz, our president and CEO, and the other members here at the state office, from all the leadership and local programs. Without you as coaches, Special Olympics doesn't exist. So thank you for your dedication. With that, I know, Jarrett or Kathy, anything you'd like to add from an Alpine management team?
No, think cold, think snow.
Good answer. Good answer.
But on a positive side, WISP is open. They've got 8 trails running. They opened up the day
That's
Thanksgiving.
great.
So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I think they said on those trails they have a 26-inch base. So
yeah, in case you guys missed it when Kathy was going through the slides, hydrate.
okay.
Very good. And Elizabeth, anything you'd like to add as a one-day sport director on staff?
Nothing to add yet, but I'm excited for this to be my first season and a great learning experience for me.
Very good.
Welcome.
Very good. All right, everyone. Again, don't hesitate to reach out via email. If you have questions after reviewing the slide deck in more detail, just let us know. We're here to help you, and appreciate you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Kathy and Jarrett, potentially, if you could hang on, I'm not sure the questions Nate has.
Okay.